think we're good to go. Let me see if I can hear the echo here. Alright, cool. That means the audio is good to go. Sweet. Hey, how's it going? We're back at it. I haven't done a stream for a couple days actually. I think the last time I streamed was a week and a half ago or so. But anyways, yeah, we're doing something a little bit different this time. We're actually not doing so much layouts here. I'll actually show you what I did it, because what I have been working on, I kind of finalized. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I still need to kind of get my critique on it, but I got sort of my chapter openers finalized, and so this is kind of here. I'll show you here. So I'm working on my portfolio, as most of you guys might not or might know. And my mouse is stuck. Oh my gosh. Okay, here we go. So I'm working on my graphic design portfolio, right? And I need to create a. Or I'm not even showing you guys yet. Well, let me just kind of talk to you guys about it first. So I'm working on my graphic design portfolio, right? I've been working on creating a book to put all my projects in. And I've also been doing a lot of stuff to make my projects look good so I can put that into my book. So two type of things, right? I'm creating stuff to put into my book, which is like photographing my projects or putting them into a mock-up form. So that way I don't just have like a flat 2D PDF in my book. So that's one part, and that's what we're going to be working on tonight. What I've been doing mainly is showing you guys the book layout, me creating different chapter openers, and you guys might be wondering why it's taken so long to do this, but it's sort of the process, right? I try something, does it work? Yes, no, maybe. If it doesn't work, then I try something else. So unfortunately, I haven't been able to find something that works quite yet, or something that's just different enough, right? I mean, I create a lot of cool designs that theoretically are good designs, but it's about pushing it a little bit farther, right? So I'm not just creating an okay design or an alright design. So let me move this up a bit so I'm actually talking into the mic. So I'll show you what I have for my chapter opener so far. This is something that I've created. If you can imagine a line going smack down the middle of this, and this isn't zoomed in all the way. So there's like the running head at the top, which would be like the navigation, book title, my name, a descriptor of what the book actually is. This 07 out of 09 would indicate that this is project 7 out of 9 projects. And since this is the chapter opener, 7 is a lot bigger, but throughout the rest of the pages that 7 wouldn't be there, so it's still nice to have that little indicator, as well as what project it is, and then a description of that project. My idea is based a lot around quotes, so that's why I have a big quote. Just information about the project, and then information about the class here in the bottom left hand corner, which would be like instructor, the semester I took it, what deliverables there were, etc. So that's kind of where I've landed, and we'll see if that ends up sticking. I think it can end up working. So that's that. What I'm doing tonight is I'm going to be doing some photo editing. So with this, I'm going to be showing you guys how I kind of I do a lot in Photoshop, and I have a lot of fun in Photoshop. So this is going to be just kind of me sharing my process of how I edit photos. So this is a photograph that I took. I have a photo studio set up in my garage, and I took this photograph of one of these package design projects that I did. This is 1 out of 3 boxes for this one project. So I've already done this one. I've taken this photo, I've edited it in Photoshop, and created something that looks like what you see on the right hand side here. So pretty similar. I mean, if you do a quick glance, you wouldn't really notice a difference, other than one might look slightly better, but as you look closer, there is a lot of differences. I've kind of cropped the photo in a way to make it look more straight. So this photo, I mean, as best as I can to get my tripod even, it's not perfect. And I've also actually gone through and completely replaced the background. The idea for this background was to be able to use it if I wanted it to, but more or less just to kind of get an idea of how shadows work and things like that. So I've actually created a whole digital background in Photoshop and added in my own shadowing, and I think this looks better. So my plan is to do this with the other box and kind of show you a start from finish whole process of how I do this photo editing. And it might take some time, it might take a little bit longer since I'm kind of narrating this whole thing, but the plan is to edit another box and get a finalized shot like this where I can actually click on this box and drag it all throughout the canvas and have the shadow stay with it and have it be completely seamless, rather than having a static image. And some things to keep in mind too. I mean, I kind of have the shadow figured out for this particular location. If I were to bring it closer to the light source here on the left hand side, the shadow might be a little bit harsher. So the idea is to kind of keep it smack dab in the middle, so that way when I actually bring this into InDesign, I have room to crop the photo. So that's what I'm doing, and we'll see where we go. So, and then as usual, if I'm ever looking this direction, I'm either looking at the chat, or responding to some text messages, or you might just be trying to find a file or something. I got everything that you're not seeing on my other screen over here. So, alright, so let's get into this. I have, I actually did a little bit of stuff, and I'm not sure if I should really kind of go over it, because it is basic stuff. Before I thought I was going to stream this. So this is the other file, right? This is what I meant by being able to move it around. Oh, I need to grab both folders here. So being able to move it around like this, right? Oh no, I bought more RAM, and I was hoping that I'd be able to do Photoshop work with you guys, but we'll see how well it works out. So the idea is to be able to just move it around if needed. The plan is to kind of keep it in the middle, but we'll see. I always like being able to move things around. It makes me feel a little bit more comfortable. Anywho, so this other box that we have, this is the other box. And then this whole project's point was taking a well-known brand and seeing if you can move it into a different market. So Xbox, right? Xbox creates the Xbox video game stuff. But my idea was, what happens when Xbox decides to try and sell home appliances? So what does that look like? Does it look exactly the same? Does it look a little bit different? And so I took a lot of inspiration from Gamer Setup, where they have the neon lights, sort of like backlighting their displays, and merged that with Microsoft's branding, because Xbox is owned by Microsoft, and kind of merging those two ideas. And so I take a lot of the typography from Microsoft and use the sort of gamer vibe with these products. So there's like one panel that is backlit, one panel that has a hero shot with some simple typography, and then if you look over here on the flip side of this box turned around, there is these simple icons with just simple text. So the idea was for it to be very simple, very clean, and very I guess gamery and family friendly. But I think they turned out well. I mean, looking at them now, it's really not that complex of a project, but I think they all ended up really well. Really well, really good. Is there a right or wrong way on that? Anyway, so this is the box here. This is the photograph. I've already I don't know what the proper term is, but I shot these photographs in RAW, which means when I bring them into Photoshop, I get an extra set of little sliders and little adjustments that I can make. So I've already done that. I've made it look how I like, or how I would like it to. I was mainly focusing on what does the actual box itself look like, and not so much the background, because I'm planning on removing the background. So playing with things like highlights, shadows. I always do the thing where it automatically adjusts for what lens you shoot it in. I shot this in a Canon 24 millimeter f.28, I believe, and it's a prime lens. It's not the expensive zoom lens, but it still gets the same sort of effect if you need it to without the zoom capabilities. It's the difference between like a $150 lens and a $2,500 lens, so that's what I could afford at the time. So I'm gonna I always do that because sometimes it creates a slight warp effect, sort of like a fisheye. The really wide angle lenses will have a fisheye effect, and you want to counteract that. So you could do it manually with warp, or you can just click the setting and a drop down menu appears, and most of the time it just automatically selects which lens you shoot with, and then you're good to go. And then I also click the chromatic aberration. That'll be like you won't be able to see it here, but like the pink and blue lines on the edges of your design or your photograph, that I don't know what causes that, but it's a photography thing that the high-end lenses will prevent, but you can also just do it through software as well. Again, cheaper. And for me, I'm not a crazy photographer expert, so I mean, I know photography, I'm not that guy that's gonna fuss about the small details. It's just got to look good. I'm printing it on an uncoated matte paper, so it's not going to be as sharp as you would see on screen, so you wouldn't even really notice this anyways. Plus, with all the Photoshop work I'm doing, I could just easily cut it out. Alright, anyways, I'm gonna stop talking and just kind of, I guess, stop digressing and get more into what I'm going to actually talk about. So, alright, 2 things that I've done already. I've already maxed out this box from the background, so it's now a transparent layer, and I could add a black background if I want. The reason why I add a black background is so that way I can easily tell where there might be some like white edges like this. So this one here isn't too bad. I'm probably just going to keep that there because it adds a little bit of dimension to it. Or I think it's more of like a small highlight maybe. I could get rid of it, but it's not that big of a deal. But yeah, the main point is just to actually right here, I would probably fix this right here. So I'll go through in here and take my pen tool, and I'll just cut this out slightly. And I don't want to do too much because I don't want to add a weird angle to this, but I'm going to make a selection out of that. And I always do 0.5 pixels, so that way it's not super harsh. And that's looking a little bit better. And then down here, this is actually a little bit different. This is where my comping skills weren't perfect. I mean, this was a very well done box, I would say, but there were some things that needed to be, or that I just ended up missing on, or so this is where the design actually goes a little bit past the bottom flap there. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've gone through and added the clone stamp tool, and you saw a little bit of a change on this side too, but let me talk about this right hand side first. All I did was go through with I can use the pen tool, or if I know I'm just using straight lines, I'll just use the polygon, what is it called? The polygonal lasso, I think that's what it's called. Polygonal lasso, yeah, that sounds weird though. Anyways, I'll use that, and I'll come through here, and I just made this sort of shape, and I'm leaving this white line here on the bottom, because all boxes would have that white line down there depending on how they're made, and I want to keep that white line. Did I actually keep that white line over here? I think I did. Well, this side didn't have it actually. So I will do that as well. Did I forget to do it on the back, or am I just going to leave it like that? I don't mind it so much here on the back. I'm just going to leave it. Well, the whole point of this though is to make it look like a real box, and that I didn't do like a student's worthy what is it called, like comping on this. I want to make it look like it's a real thing, so I'm trying to, the little shortcuts that I use as a student, which is just to tile this whole thing, which means I print each side separately and I just tape it all together. Ideally, this would be one giant die line that's seamless, and you just have maybe 1 or 2 folds on it. So that's something that I'll do on this one here, just because it's the front. The back side I don't mind so much, because there would naturally be, even if you did this, there would be some sort of white line on one of these angles. That's just how boxes work. So it would make sense for it to be on the back side, but not here. This here would be a simple fold. Anyways, I probably just overly complicated that whole thing. But for what I did here is I just selected this color. I selected a color over here. I created a gradient, and I added a little bit of noise. I just went up here to filter, noise, add noise, and I just added 1. You just want to make sure it looks similar to the rest of the noise, because there is some noise on this photograph. It's not vector art. This is a photograph. so there's going to be some noise on it depending on how good your lens is. Plus there was also a little bit of dust on the box, or this was printed with an inkjet printer, so it's not vector art, it's not supposed to look perfect. So I did that, and then I did that in the separate layer, and I took the eraser, I clicked here, shift clicked over here, and that just created a little bit of feathering, so that way it blended in with the rest of the design. And if you saw over here, I got rid of the cracking on the bottom of the design. You can see how there's a little bit of scratches. Could have happened just me keeping this in a box for a year or moving it around and shooting it. But most likely it was when I actually folded the box and the ink cracked a little bit. So that's okay. That happens when you make boxes. I mean, you can do your best to avoid it, but every once in a while it will happen. That's just how some papers end up working. So what I did was this one here would have been a little bit harder to do with the clone stamp. So I actually just, again with my polygonal lasso, I came over here and I made a shape like this. So I didn't select the bottom, but I made a shape like this. I just duplicated that shape, brought it down, and then I just masked out that layer. So that because this design here is pretty similar to what's a 1/4 of an inch down. So I just did that, and then again I covered it up, and there you go. So you can actually see on this design it starts to gradient out a little bit towards the bottom, and then when I cover it up, that gradient's not so much prevalent. Not a big deal. It looks fine. You wouldn't even be able to notice this far away. You might not even notice that that's even a reflection. So again, you're designing for the medium that it's going in. I'm not designing for this to be viewed as like a huge photograph on a banner. I'm designing this to be on an 8x10 sheet in a portfolio. Got a message real quick. Alright, so what are the next steps? So we've separated it from the background. We've added the clone stamp for those two things. The next thing that I want to do is just continue with this clone stamping. And like I said, I want to get rid of this white line here on this main corner. And I want to get rid of these tiny little scratches up here. And then just any sort of little scratches around here. So kind of like if you were doing a photograph, right? You would need to go through with the healing brush or clone stamper tool and get rid of any sort of blemishes or pimples that somebody might have. That's just the nature of photography. So I'm going to do that here, but instead of pimples, it's tiny little scratches in the box. So I'm not going to hold back. I'm just going to, anytime I see a little bit of something, I'm just going to click. And since this is a separate layer, you want to make sure that I'm using the spot healing brush tool, so you can just use that by clicking J. And you want to use content aware and sample all layers. So I'm just going to start clicking now. So anywhere I see a little tiny white dot that I don't think should be there, I'm just going to click. And as you're doing this, you might not notice a huge difference right away, but once you're done with everything, go back and hide this layer, and you'll just notice a world difference. A world of difference. I think that's the phrase. So, you just gotta be patient with it. It's gonna be a lot of clicking. And for this, I would suggest not doing huge things. Like, I wouldn't do this. Like make my brush really big and then just go like that. That actually doesn't look too bad. It did a really good job with that actually. I'm really surprised it did that. But more often than not, this thing isn't perfect, right? It's using some sort of technology just to guess what's supposed to be there. I think if we squint a little bit, it might be kind of weird. Overall, I don't think it's a huge issue. Oh. I'm just going to kind of click around it just to... but the point I'm trying to make is this thing's not perfect, so it's not always going to make there. So look, if I just draw over this, it starts to make that line a little wobbly. So you want to be careful with that because it will end up looking weird. Plus this is really just like a brush stroke, right? So if you do a big brush stroke, there's going to be some sort of obvious mark that that was a brush stroke of some sort. And you want to avoid that. You want it to be spot healing. If you need to do lots of stuff like that, you should be using the clone stamp tool because you have a lot more kind of control on what your results will be. Could not use spot healing brush because there's not enough memory. That's weird. I don't know why it wouldn't let me do that in a selection. I don't know why it's saying that there's not enough memory. I just bought some more RAM. I think I said that already. I bought 8 more gigs of RAM for this computer, so now I'm up to 24. So that way I can live stream and then use do a lot of stuff in Photoshop. So you also want to be careful too, because this will eat up your memory. And when I say memory, I mean like your RAM. Because, I mean, Photoshop has to think. Photoshop has to think on what to put there. And it might not... You can click maybe like 100 times and Photoshop will just kind of backlog all that and it's like going down the list. And eventually it'll just crash or slow down a little bit. So I think that's good. I'm gonna go through this bar here separately. I'm gonna do something different for that, but let's just look to see what this looks like before and after. So this is after and before. It's not, I mean, it's nothing crazy, but it does look better, I feel. Alright, so let's see. I'm going to go back here and see how I did it for this guy. You know what? I don't think I actually... I think I actually did that in when I folded this box. I feel like I... Yeah, okay. So I will need to go back and do that for this one. So this is going to be my first time doing this. So I think I can just do this the same way I've done before. So I'm going to go onto my actual box layer using my polygonal... I'm just going to use my, say, lasso. I'm not going to be able to say polygon right at all. So I'm just going to kind of select this area here, right up next to this line. And I'm going to duplicate that. Now while we're working, I'm just going to disable this clone stamp thing because it's going to kind of get messed up here in a little bit. So I'm just going to call this corner fix because that's really what we're doing, right? I'm going to move this guy over slightly. And I was thinking I was going to need a way for this to blend. But there's going to be this fold. So it doesn't need to blend perfectly. I even think that looks good. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to click this. I'm going to feather this selection by maybe 5 pixels. I'm going to mask it out. Five pixels was probably a little bit too much, so all I did was just duplicate that layer and I copied it onto itself. Let's go back real quick. I got a little bit of white over here, so I need to fix that. And you can see how it's just a process of trial and error. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to try some stuff out. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. So I'm just doing some very minor details, right? So I want that corner to be fairly round. And I think it's looking pretty good, right? I want this to be... I think that's actually looking pretty good. So, but since this is, I just copied this, right? So I mean, it's got a harsh edge here on the left-hand side. Right-hand side's not bothering me too much, actually. But what I need to do is I need to go over here and then just mask this one side. So I'm just gonna... Okay, so I start there. Just gonna use my black brush, opacity at 100%, making sure that the hardness is all the way at 0%. I'm just gonna click right there and shift click down to here. And what this is, the plan is for this is just to feather out that left hand side. We'll just, you can I want to do it enough so that way you don't see that harsh break there, but you also don't want to hide all the stuff that we've been doing. And I'm still getting a little bit of weird stuff over here, so I'm just going to use my spot healing brush with a lower opacity. Actually, I'll do this on a separate layer. Just that way. We kind of keep everything separate. We're not working too destructively. I'm actually not liking how that's turning out. I thought it was going to work. Maybe let's see what this healing brush was doing some wonders before. Let's see what this does. Not liking it. Alright, I think actually at a distance, it looks fine. You're not really going to notice it. I mean, again, follow my own rule. I'm designing it for a purpose. So now look, this is a before, after. Looks better. Alright, so I'm going to keep this line here because that's how the box would fold open or fold close, right? But I want to fix this top bar up here. So again, new layer. We're just going to kind of name this, right? So this will be top fold. And we're going to do something a little bit different on this guy here. We are going to... We're just gonna, it doesn't matter how well this selection is. God, I'm trying to have proper English, but I keep messing up. Doesn't matter how good this selection is, because we can always change this later, but the idea is to make a selection kind of like that. And I'm gonna do a click there. Oh. Gonna use my eyedrop tool. Click there, click X to switch the swatch, and then click here. So with this last one that I just picked up, I'm gonna take my brush tool. I'm gonna go click like this, shift click down to there, then I press X again, click up here, and then click right here. And I'm just gonna lower the opacity a little bit, and I'm just gonna try and blend those two a little bit better. Alright, might not look that great now, but we're going to do some stuff. So I'm going to add some noise. And you can see just by adding a little bit of noise, it really helps. So I'm going to click this again. I'm just going to use my eyedrop tool again. I notice that this color over here is a little bit darker. So it's all about just trying to match it. Actually, I need to do all that before I add the noise. This is really just like digital painting, right? You want to make it look like realistic, so it's just a matter of blending stuff. Here we have a little bit of gradient, and this wouldn't be so difficult if I didn't have this gradient, but this gradient makes this a little bit tricky. So I think more or less that looks fine. So I'm going to add the noise again. And this is where it'll start to blend a little bit more. So add a mask again. And I'm going to go back to my brush tool. Make this 100% now. Make this a little bit smaller. I'm just going to kind of do what we did before, right? I'm going to click here. Click there. And, you know, more or less, that looks like a really nice fold. It's very seamless. The noise adds it to the photograph. And so now I'm just going to take all this and I'm going to make a clip and mask again so that way it sticks to the design. This right here, I actually want that little bend. So, oh my god, that was a total voice crack, wasn't it? So I want this sort of line here. So I'm going to bring the hardness up to like 80%. Now I'm going to take this and I'm just going to kind of draw right there. And that's where that paper would kind of fold into the box. So there needs to be some sort of curve there. Alright, the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to add another layer here. We don't need to add a mask. Create clipping mask. Or we're going to create a clipping mask. That way it's all locked into the outline of the box. And I'm going to use just make a white swatch. Go back to my brush settings, make the hardness 0% again. And I think, that's a pretty good size. That's 20 pixels. I'm going to click there, and then hold shift, and then click over here to the other edge of the box. And so now I'm going to change this to soft light, and I'm going to make the opacity maybe that's too broad. I should make that smaller. We're down to 15 now, so I'm going to click, same thing. Soft light, change the blend mode. We're going to make the opacity like 20%. And I guess we will kind of add a clipping mask here. I'm going to just delete this white part here. Probably not that noticeable, but so now what do we got? We got a box that looks like it's seamless. We fixed the fold up here on the top, and the fold's there because that's the light would pick up the fold a little bit more than the rest of the box. We look over here, we got the same thing going on. What did I use for the fold? I did soft light, and I only did 10% actually, so fold highlights. So I made that a little bit too much there. We'll just make that 10. That looks a little bit better. Maybe we can add that here as well. Just to see what it looks like. I don't think it needs it there. Alright, so looking pretty good. So now what do we gotta do? We gotta work on the background. But first, coffee. I actually made coffee before I started the stream this time. Alright, so this here part is gonna, oop, what am I doing? Trying to save over here, not save not save the website. So, alright, so this looks pretty good, and I think it's coming together. So now what do we gotta do? We gotta add the background, and I'm just gonna grab this background that I used before. Actually, I can just grab everything I did before. So I'm gonna grab the background and the shadow layer. And I'm just going to shift click and drag that in. Save me some time. So you can see kind of what I did for the shadow here. The shadow, I created obviously the shadow here to kind of keep aligned with the angle that was in the photograph. And I have added a darker shadow here because there's going to be that dark shadow that's right at the very end of the box. The very end of the box is going to have a little bit of a shadow to it. So I'll show you here on this guy. So when I did this guy, there's that little bit of a shadow here on the very end of the box, and then a little bit darker over here because that's obviously where the light's not hitting. But that shadow comes from, this box isn't like flushed 100% with the table, right? There is that tiny little curve that comes up when the box comes up. That's just how boxes work. Nothing is like 100% like mounted, glued to the table when you set it down. There's a little bit of a lift on the outer edges. So that's where that shadow comes into play. And it's really just kind of inspecting photographs, and there might be a little bit of an exaggeration on this for what would happen in real life, but that's almost kind of needed. You want to kind of exaggerate small things like that, just to kind of emphasize that, hey, this is a 3D product. They even say when you're doing product photography and you're photographing something like a pencil, or not a pencil, like a piece of paper, is to put it on top of something, like maybe get 2 little blocks and put it on top of that, so that way it creates a shadow, so that way it doesn't seem so flat. Because that's the point of photographing things, is to add that sort of dimension to it. Alright, so the background I think is fine. Maybe we can make some stuff a little bit smaller here. So I think that's the, let's see. I think I'll kind of go there on the background. We'll just move this guy up here a little bit. I'm mainly concerned with that big shadow, that small shadow like I was just talking about. We'll move that around in a little bit. I'll actually move that around right now. So that's actually the main thing that we're going to have to fix. That bigger shadow more or less looks fine. So let's find that layer that this one shadow is on, and we'll fix it. Oh man, I accidentally overdid it on that one there. Alright, so I'll have to fix that, I think. Well, that's a bummer, because I really liked how that one turned out. Maybe I can just make it smaller and hide it. I'm getting this sort of like little bend up here from before I accidentally clicked on the wrong layer when I created that guy. No, I'm using the wrong layer for that. Okay, so I click on that, and I can just kind of hide it behind the box, and it still looks fine. Okay, cool. Nothing to worry about. So we got our shadow clicked on over there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sort of delete a couple of these guys here. And I'm just going to create a new layer, and we'll just kind of do the shadow in here like I've done before. So for this, we're just going to use a black brush. We're going to bring the opacity down to maybe 45% or so right now, and we're just going to click here. We're going to click there. Alright, so now I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. Do the same thing, click it again. And I'm going to make it even smaller. And right as close as I can get, I'm just going to kind of click back and forth. And I have this in a group by accident. I'm going to take it out of the group. And it's actually making me rethink that now. So I'm going to start over again. I'm going to click here once, click here again. Make it smaller, and then click as close as we can. And we more or less get something kind of like this. I'm going to clean it up a little bit with the eraser tool. And now we're going to do the same thing over here, but bring the opacity down to maybe 14-15%. Do that, and now bring it up to maybe like 36%. Click, click. And we get something kind of like this. And now it's just going to be kind of like little fine details where I fix some of the corners like this. This corner here feels a little odd, so I'm going to bring the opacity on the eraser tool down to like 17. Do something kind of like that. Maybe go back with the brush every now and then and try and even that out. There's kind of a weird splotch there. You know, I'm pretty happy with that. What does it look like if we make this soft light instead? No, I think full opacity is good. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Now I'm just gonna, I really like what the other design looks like, so I'm gonna go back to that one and just kind of compare the two. So this one here is a lot more feathered out than this guy. So we can try something out. We can do one or two things. I'm just gonna duplicate this layer real quick. And I'm gonna just simple go to blur, Gaussian blur. And click OK. Did I do it? Did I, I think I hit the wrong button. Okay. Try it again. I think around 8 or 7.8 is looking good. Click OK. Alright, and then if I bring in that other layer again, and if I mask out that harsh on the right, it's really all just about finding what you think looks best. The process isn't going to be identical from box to box, but you follow the same sort of process, and then you might have to tweak a thing here or there, and then eventually it's going to end up looking good. Hey, I can't see your name, it's really small on my screen, but thank you for the follow. How's it going? I'm glad the Streamlabs thing is working again. I didn't have it working before, and we had a couple of people follow, and I wasn't able to say thank you because it wasn't showing their name, but let's see, maybe it's you're on the viewer list. No, I don't see it on the viewer list, but hey, thank you for the follow. So I think that the shadow, actually there's this a little bend over here that's bothering me. So I'm just going to fix that real quick. Well, yeah, I'm masking white on white. So I'm going to fix that, maybe bring the opacity down a little bit. And there we go. Cool, and I can't really think of too much more to do at this point. Let's just do a final little inspection. And I think we are this is still bothering me a little bit. I can still kind of tell that there's this line right here, so I might try to go and redo that real quick. And that's a pretty simple fix actually. So what is that? That's corner fix. So if I add a new layer again, I'm going to do the same thing that we did before, but I'm going to be a little bit more precise with it. So I'm going to use my pen tool. And I'm just going to add more space over here on the left-hand side. I'm going to make a selection. We'll do like a... No, that's fine. 0.5 is fine. Again, I'm going to duplicate this, and then same process as before. I'm going to bring that up there. Fix the clipping mask on all these guys. I'm going to bring this guy over a little bit. Why am I not seeing this? That's weird. Okay. So let me real quick, where do I want that fold to go? I'm actually going to take this opportunity to fix something that's actually wrong with my physical mockup. My physical mockup has this weird bend to it, so I'm actually just gonna fix that. So this white line here is more or less where I want this to be. Maybe I can make this a weird color so I can see a little bit better. So I want to take this sort of design that I have and before I do anything, I'm going to mask out this side here. And that's looking pretty seamless to me now, so we're doing good then. So I'm going to take this now, and I'm just going to warp it to fit that line. Oh no, that messes it up, huh? So I'm not going to warp it then. What I'll do is I'll just mask it out. So I'll take my little pen tool here, be able to straighten it out that way, make a selection. And now we have more or less a straight line. And that's going to look good down here. Make a selection. And not in the mask layer, but the actual layer, we're going to go through here and take the clone stamp tool, click Alt, and we can turn up the opacity, and just fix in that bottom corner. We might want to come in here and smooth that out a tad. Cool. And the only other thing that I didn't like here was there's this faint little white line, so I'm just gonna go back to the layer mask again, take my pen tool, and I'm gonna try and get to the very right of that layer. I think we got it. Alright, cool. So now I'm just going to re-add everything. And I need to add this to the clipping mask again. Okay, so why is it doing that? Oh, duh. There we go. That's better now. I missed one clipping mask. So now that line there isn't as noticeable. I feel like it's better. But what I will do is I'll go here to the top fold and I'll add, or the fold highlight. I'm going to add that fold highlight again, but onto this side. So I think we were at like 20 before. So I'm going to click, and then I click down there again. I might do it one more time. And there we go. I feel better about that now. It's looking good. So, I mean, I guess that's how you do it, right? I mean, how long did that take us? If you minus all the time for me talking, that probably took about a half an hour. Probably would have taken less if I wasn't trying to narrate the whole thing. And I think that you get a really nice, professionally photographed box this way. And, I mean, this kind of, once you figure out the first box, it saves you a lot of time because you're working on the shadows and the background and everything like that. But because obviously I didn't go through and do the background and shadows on this one, I kind of saved some time on that. But all I really did was create a gray background. Right, I found a color that I liked. I made it gray, and I added a small gradient from like a vertical gradient. From like right around this horizon line, right around this area here, maybe a little bit higher. The same area where that sort of seamless background would bend in my photograph. Then I just made a very faint gradient. And then I also came up here, really thought about what the lighting would be like, right? And that's where you can use your photo for reference. I added a light source up here, all using gradients. So I added some white up here, some black over here, some black over here in this corner, some more white down here in this area, and just to kind of create a realistic photo scene, right, where you can obviously tell the light here is coming from the left hand side. That's why the shadow is on the right. It's darker over here on the right because the main key light would be over here on the left. And then just figuring out shadows too is just getting a mixture of what you think would look good, and using photos for reference as well, so that way it looks realistic, because that's the whole goal here, is to make this look realistic. And something that I've also done is in the background here I have this black layer which kind of covers everything. Could probably even put it above the shadow layer, maybe not. But I do have a noise layer, and the noise layer, so that way the background has more or less the same level of the noise as the photograph does, because this background here is all Photoshop. It's nothing part of this background is real. I'm not even like slightly using it above the background or above the layer. It's 100% opacity. It's taking up the whole background. So I need to add a little bit of a noise to it, so that way the background doesn't look picture perfect and then the photograph's all grainy, because then that'll just make your printing look bad. On this box, you want it to look uniform, and that's really how you make things look photorealistic. I find this is just my secret, is I use noise. So using the filter, going up here to noise, and then adding noise. I use monochromatic, so that way you don't get weird colors in it, but really just adding the noise, I think, is the step that most people forget, because they do all this hard work to make the shadows look good, and then for some reason it still doesn't look right, and then I think the noise is the thing that really fixes it. So that's my secret. Use noise. Use noise, make your shadows look good. Low opacity when you're using the brush tool. Don't come in here trying to do these shadows with 100% opacity brush strokes. Lower it down so that way you can make multiple passes, and then it just feathers things out a little bit nicer. So anyways, so that's kind of this box. You can do one more little look here. Looking at this now, this front shadow is not as dark as I thought, so I'm going to go through into the shadows real quick, and I'm just going to lower that down a tad. So I probably don't even need that second one there. Maybe I'll just reduce that to 25, or 25. Nope. Hopefully I didn't delete it. I clicked the wrong button by accident. There we go. So, cool. Now we got... And then if we did this all right, you can put all this into a group. You can call this alarm clock front. Oh, and then... So this... I forgot about the back. This is all for the front. You would follow the same exact process for the back. And if you're like me and you did the photograph, I did a lot of work to make sure that I photographed these at the exact same angle. So all I need to do now is bring in the photograph from the back side, and the angle should be pretty much exactly the same, pretty much identical. So then all I need to do for that is the same thing, the healing brush, any sort of bends like this that I need to add the highlight and the clone stamp and hide that. Then I should be able to just copy and paste it right on top of the shadow, and the shadow should be the same. So same exact process for the backside. But then, I mean, all I need to do now is just click this alarm clock group, click my shadows group, and I can just move it around. See? It's pretty cool when something looks like a static photo, and then you have the ability to drag it around. Kind of a... That's why I like using mock-ups. Mock-ups are great, because if you get a good mock-up, it looks like a real photo, but you can move it around, and it's pretty awesome how realistic they are. So, anyways, I'm gonna kind of take off now. This is a short stream. Normally I stream for a couple hours, but this is all I really wanted to kind of go over tonight. I got some other stuff to do. I got to do some printing tonight before I call it a night, and yeah. So, anyways, that's how you do the photo editing. People are always asking me how I do all this photo editing and what my secrets are. So hopefully this little video was enough to kind of show how I do things. So I mean, there's a lot, right? It's just knowing how to use Photoshop and figuring it out. I mean, this is bothering me. I'm gonna fix this real quick. I'm gonna go up here with my pen tool. There's this weird little bend. Make selection, and then hide that. And that's a little too pointy for my liking. Anyways, yeah, but it's just knowing Photoshop, knowing what things can do. And there we go, that looks better. But, yeah, and then, I mean, you guys might be wondering how I figured all this stuff out, and I've been using Photoshop for over 10 years now. But it's just trial and error. Like, I still don't know what all these blend modes, like, the exact result. More or less, I know what each one will do, but why it does that or how it does it, I have no idea. It's just, you try it out. Does it look good? Yeah, sure, maybe. Yeah, I will say that when you use blend modes, though, you got to be careful when you go and merge your layers. It might not always merge how you think. So, anyways, so that's how you do the photograph editing. So we want some. So if we do a little before and after now. Let's see if we can do this here. Let me find the file. Portfolio, Xbox, photo session, to be edited. This is what the backside looks like anyways, if you guys are curious. This is what the other side of the box looks like. So following the same system as before, this one here, I mean, the only sort of pen tool that I can tell just from, I can't zoom in because I just hit space, but probably this bottom right hand corner on that seam mark right there. I could either just pen tool that out, or I can try to fix it. I think I might just be able to pen tool it out and it'd be good. But since, like I said, I'm going to leave this line here because that's where the line would be normally. That line there can stay there. I think I might need to do some pen tool work here on the very top of the orange as well. But then, yeah, that doesn't look too difficult actually. I might try to straighten out this as well because it looks like that this line here kind of flares out a little bit, kind of odd. So I might try to straighten that up, and again, just pen tool. I can simply do that with the pen tool. But alright, so before and after, this is what we looked like before. We had, I mean, obviously this is my Photoshop backdrop, right? You can see kind of the rest of the garage here. past the paper. Shadows aren't 100% perfect. I have a couple lights so that way there's, not intentionally, but just to kind of light this box up nicely. And we're getting a dual shadow. We're getting the main shadow line right here, and then we're also getting another shadow right here. Not so pronounced, but it's there. I don't really like that look. I think it's good just to have one solid shadow line. But then also looking at this to see how the shadow kind of works its way up this sort of seamless background. But we went from something like this to something like this. And you can see even just the color too, like this photograph looks a little bit washed out, and you might be, when you go and do these photos, you might take this photo and be like, man, I'm not that great of a photographer. How come this isn't looking like what I see on the internet? And the secret is you either have to be like a really good professional photographer to get something like this perfect the first try without any editing. But even the best photographers need to go into Photoshop and work their magic. So a lot of these deep blacks, the saturation and everything I was able to get simply just by clicking a few sliders in Photoshop. And again, you have to do that by shooting in RAW. So you have to make sure you're shooting in RAW, otherwise you won't have so much, you won't have that much power over how much you edited this. Oh my gosh, I'm getting tired already. If you shoot in RAW, you have a lot more flexibility with the editing power. A simple JPEG, you can do things like in adjustments here. I don't know why I can't click on it. There we go, adjustments. You can do like brightness and contrast. You'll be able to do all this stuff with a JPEG, but it's a static image. There's more. I don't even know how to explain this, but there's more information packed into a RAW file than there is a JPEG. So even though it might look the same on the camera or even on the computer, there's still more that you can do. If you try to increase the shadows with a RAW photo, it won't look as pixelated or noisy if you try doing it with the JPEG. So anyways, moral of the story, shoot in RAW, you have to use Photoshop. So just flipping back and forth between these two, they look pretty good. Something I'll need to figure out too is, and I think I did it just without trying, is that that sort of horizon line that I was talking about needs to be higher up for this photo, because this box is like half the size of this box. So it doesn't make sense if this box looks like it's the same exact size on this one. I need to be able to use that sort of horizon line as a way to kind of add some scale to this. Anyways, I'm gonna head out. I will probably be streaming either Thursday night or Friday night. Keep an eye out on Twitter for when I stream. I always post it when I'm going live. And thank you for stopping by. Thank you for the dude that followed. Much appreciated. Don't really have a set schedule yet, but make sure you follow and you hit notifications to get notifications when I go live, or follow me on Twitter. Anyways, I'm gonna head out. Have a good night, and I'll see you guys next time.